James Webb. James Webb Telescope and James Webb.
Yeah, there's been a lot of media reports suggesting that the findings of the James Webb Telescope have undermined the case for the Big Bang or the Big Bang Theory. But there's an interesting backstory on this. Most of these media reports were based on the writings of a single physics researcher named Eric Lerner, who's been, since 1990, kind of carrying a torch to refute the Big Bang. And Lerner, in one of his articles, quoted a University of Kansas astrophysicist saying that she stays up late at night wondering if, based on the James Webb, that everything that we know is turning out to be false. Turns out that researcher, that astrophysicist, disclaimed his use of the quote, explaining that he took it completely out of context. That she was talking about theories of galaxy formation, not about whether or not there had been a Big Bang, and not about whether or not the universe is expanding as we would expect.
So he's confirmation bias.
Yeah, and in a sense also taking somebody way out of context to make a point of his own. You know, he misused the quotation
on purpose.
Apparently.
Apparently.
So here's and there have been a number of leading astrophysicists. In fact, people who would like to know more about this, I'd recommend what Brian Keating from University of California, San Diego, great astrophysicist, has been writing about this. But here's the short story. I wrote an op-ed in the Daily Wired distilling some of this stuff. What the James Webb Telescope is able to do is in fact, what it was constructed to do was to detect extremely long wavelength radiation, stuff that's outside the visible range. I call it uber redshifted. It's actually in the infrared range is the more accurate physics term. So it's looking for very long wavelength radiation coming from galaxies that are very, very far out there. Now, why would it be looking for that? Well, because if the universe is expanding as we would expect based on the Big Bang Theory, then the radiation coming from things very, very far out in space and therefore very far back in time should be very stretched out, more stretched out than stuff that's closer at hand. So the James Webb was constructed in hopes of detecting that type of radiation if it existed. It's not assuming that it necessarily would, but it would be a way of confirming the expansion of the universe has been going on for a very long time. And in order to do that, the NASA people created some amazing technology. They supercooled the detection technology, or the detection apparatus, to I think 5, 6, 7 degrees above absolute zero, so that the heat coming off of the instrument itself was not creating infrared that would interfere. And what they were in fact able to detect from these very ancient, very distant galaxies was super redshifted radiation, uber redshifted stuff out in the infrared, and were able, on the basis of that, to synthesize images of these very, very distant remote galaxies. Now, the very fact that they were able to do that confirms that you have what you would expect on the basis of the Big Bang Theory, that the amount of redshift that you would expect to be present if, in fact, the galaxies had been expanding throughout that vast stretch of time was, in fact, present and was detected. Now, that didn't get reported. The whole focus was on the fact that there were galaxies that were more mature, there were more of them early on than we would have expected based on our theories of galaxy formation. And so those are anomalies that need to be addressed and have not yet been explained, as I understand it. Maybe the astrophysicists have made more progress on that in even recent days. But the basic picture of an expanding universe outward from a beginning has not been undermined, but rather confirmed in a very dramatic way at very great distance and for galaxies that are a very far look-back time, way, way back in time. So I think it's a rather dramatic confirmation. There have been many others, the cosmic background radiation that was discovered in 1965, the COBE radiation that George Smoot discovered in the 90s. So there's been this pattern of confirming evidence of this basic picture of an expanding universe out from the beginning in observational astronomy from the 20s right up till now. And so that, I think, gives us good reason to think best we can tell the universe at a beginning.
Can I pause you on that? What is when she was discussing the formation of galaxies, What had thrown that into question? Like what was about the formation of galaxies that undermined previous ideas?
I'm going to answer tentatively because I don't know this as well as the other that I just described.
Okay.
But as I understand it, it's that there are more galaxies that formed earlier and are more mature than we would have expected, because they were able to look back to 13.5, 13.6 billion years ago. They think the origin of the universe is about 13.8 billion years ago. So apparently galaxies were forming faster than we would have expected. And I think that's the anomaly that is on the table.
Does that just push the timeline further back, but still come up with the data that points to the idea of a beginning?
I've wondered that. That seems to me a logical possibility. Maybe the origin of the universe was further back, but you're still getting this picture of a tricky to explain easily. But basically, they show that there is again a limiting case, and therefore a definite beginning to time. And therefore, that it does not have the same loophole that the singularity theorems of Hawking and Penrose. So what I've said what I argue in the book is that a body of evidence from observational astronomy, a strong indicator from theoretical physics, namely the singularity theorems of Hawking et al., and then a very compelling proof from Borguth and Vilenkin all point to the same conclusion, that as best we can tell, the universe had a beginning. And I think that's the best we can do in science, but that is a pretty weighty range of testimony supporting the same conclusion.
Did you ever read any Terence McKenna?
I haven't.
Terence McKenna had a very funny thing that he said about science. He said, science wants you to believe that it's all about measurement and reason if you allow them one miracle. That one miracle is the Big Bang.
Yes.
That all things come from the most preposterous idea ever.
Yeah.
That everything came from nothing in one big miracle.
That's right. I completely
totally
agree
paraphrased it. He probably said it far more eloquently.
Well, this was for Fred Hoyle's objection to the Big Bang. He said he was a Democritean. He didn't believe. He said nothing comes from nothing, and I simply refuse to believe that the physical universe came from nothing physical. And moreover, he said it smacks of the Genesis account, which he detested, and so he rejected the Big Bang and formulated this steady state model that was later, I think, decisively refuted by the discovery of the cosmic background radiation. It happens. I've had funny coincidental meetings with Hoyle, Herman Bondi, and Thomas Gold, all three of the architects of the steady state model. I met Bondi and Hoyle when I was a PhD student in Cambridge. And Hoyle held on to his dying day for the steady state. But Bondi, actually, we had a conversation about it, and he said that it turned out that it was a brilliant idea. It was a beautiful idea. Just that it turned out that everything about it was wrong, and he rejected it. So, but later, Hoyle had his own conversion to a kind of quasi-theistic worldview because of his discovery of the fine-tuning parameters. But the point is that the materialists did not expect to have this evidence from the beginning. Hoyle thought that the laws of physics were the first law of conservation of matter and energy. Matter and energy are neither created nor destroyed except at the Big Bang. And he didn't like that, but eventually I think the physics community came around. There were so many indicators of that beginning event.